Okay, so today we're going to cover back exercises. If you're continuing to watch the series, you're going to find as you get into low intermediate skate skiing that if you want to progress, you've got to have a really strong back and a really strong core. If you don't, it'll be hard to do and you'll risk injury. And I just wanted to show it's early in the morning. We've had another over 1.5 feet of snowfall in the last little over 24 hours. We've had over 14 feet of snow so far fall this year, and it's been slow and steady, just keeps coming and coming. It's January 11th today. So anyway, I'll get over to the mat and we'll get going. Okay, so this will sound kind of funny, but the first thing with back exercises is getting down properly. I can show you how I do it. Everybody can have their own way, but the key is you want to be careful. You want to protect the low back. If you're acute, then you have to be really careful. So here we go. I just get on the mat. For me, I like to just go in an athletic stance down, and as soon as I can, protect myself. And then I'm good. I'm down safely on the mat. And the first thing I do once I'm down is I bring my knees up to the chest and I curve my thoracic and cervical spine a little bit. The other parts of the spine are curving too, but I make a special point of curving the upper spine because a lot of these exercises are focused more on the low back, but I'm just trying to get all the facet joints moving throughout the spine. And the facet joints articulate each spinal body as they're stacked up. There are facet joints that articulate with the bodies. Okay, so we're loosening those up a little. Then I just get down, and in the morning, usually after sleeping, you'll find you have a pretty good lordotic curve, which leaves your low back above the mat. And what I want to do, and part of why I bring the knees forward first, is to relax everything so that then I can lie completely flat and I kind of wiggle around. So I'm just wiggling the spine and working slowly and steadily on getting the low back flat. And as to get it really flat, you have to engage your abs, engage the core, and push down to really flatten it. And I just do that for a little while, do a little wiggling around to wiggle the spine. And then I get up to start the exercises in earnest. So the first one I do that's really starting to focus on the lumbosacral spine, the low back, is a Feldenkrais exercise. And they have this concept of the pelvic clock. So if you think of a clock face, a circle, right around here, this is 12, this is 6, 9, and 3. And so I go down, and right now I have 12 and 6 touching the ground. And what I start to do, and I'm going to exaggerate it so you can see it, is I raise 12 and push to 6, and then I go the other way. But the key when you're doing this one, at least what I found works really well for me, is when 12 is pushing hard into the mat, I still make sure that 6 is touching down here. And the reason is that still confers protection to your lumbosacral spine. So I do 30 of those. 6 is touching hard, 12 just barely, now 12 hard, and 6 just barely. And then I go back and forth and do 30 full cycles. You have to keep your abs fully, strongly engaged as you do this. That's both going to protect your lumbosacral spine as you do this, and it's going to help build up your abs. The other thing is that everything I've shown so far, you can do even if you have an acute spine problem. So if my back is really inflamed, which for me, I've had sciatica for 35 years, never had surgery so far, and I've done these exercises twice a day for 35 years. So you can keep it at bay over time if you keep up with these exercises. After the 6 and 12 with the pelvic clock, I then do a circular motion. So I'm going clockwise, 12, 3, 6, 9, and working my way around the clock. But keep in mind that as one part of the clock is pushing really hard against the mat, I still have the opposite side of the clock barely touching. So I'm not freely flying around in the air on the other side. It's just that I'm pushing the hardest at 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6. But I'm keeping the opposite side still touching just a little bit to provide stability. Once I'm done with those, and again, everything I've done so far you can do when the spine is acute. For me, with 35 years of sciatica, I tend to get an acute exacerbation once or twice a year, usually lasts a few days. I can usually still ski or run even during the exacerbation. So next is I just lift up my leg. I keep the lower leg roughly parallel to the ground. I make sure that my back is flat. So the hollow in the back is flattened out, touching the mat. My abs are engaged really strong. I just do 10 of those on one side, and then I do 10 on the other side. And I normally keep my neck straight in line. And you might notice I use my hands to help support. If you're younger and really strong, you may not need to do that. But once you have back issues, I would strongly recommend use the hands to support. After 10 on each side, I go into a bridge. And then first with one leg, I go up and do 10 of these. And I won't do quite as many as 10 for the video. And then I do 10 on the other side. So this actually is my morning. These are my real deal this morning, because in a little while I'll be working remotely. My main work is as a physician, so I'll be doing that in just a little while. So trying to get, some real stretching in. When you first look at that and you first try it, if you've never done it before, you'll probably just start laughing. I know I did. Somebody showed it to me, and I'm like, what the heck? That's impossible. You just have to trust it, and eventually the muscles start firing better, and you can do that one that I just showed. The next one is you go across like this, and you just do a nice stretch. It stretches the SI joint and really beautifully stretches your low back. And then to start it, you put the opposite hand on the outside of the leg like that, of the thigh, pull it across and get a beautiful stretch. I usually do 2 of those, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to do 1. And then this one, I believe they called the cowboy stretch. I learned these exercises from about 5 different physical therapists, as well as about 3 different physical medicine and rehab docs back in the 80s when I first started developing sciatica. So I had some great help developing these. So this one you grab still on the thigh, just not quite to the knee, and you just pull and give a nice stretch. Again, you'll stretch the SI joint and just you stretch a lot of different things that feel great. So we'll get that done, and I usually do 2 of those each side. Then getting up very carefully, especially if the back is acute. And by the way, if the back is acute, you're certainly not going to do the one where I was in a bridge on one leg. That's a no-go when you're acute. And you'll be able to tell if you start to try one of these and you're acute and your back feels like it's going to seize up, just skip that one. So next I just do 20 sort of low-level triceps dips, and I'll truncate this, of course, for the sake of time. And then holding my opposite hand behind me, and I'll show you on the camera side too, I just do a nice little stretch toe stretch, stretching especially the hamstrings, but a lot of other things stretch too in this. And then this is how I do it on the other side, very carefully using the opposite hand to help support you and keep you stable. There's a lot of ways to do these kind of stretches, but this is what I like because it incorporates in the flow of the exercise. Then normally I would do 20 more triceps dips. I'll skip those. Then I go to an adductor stretch, these inner muscles of the thigh. I've never been super flexible, even doing these twice a day for 35 years or so, but you just go until your limit, and then as you work into the stretch, you might go a little beyond, but don't hurt yourself. The adductors are really important muscles. They're somewhat easily injured in runners and in skiers, so be careful not to hurt yourself. And now we'll stop for just a minute, and then I'll get down prone. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to prone again. You just want to be sensible when you do this to protect your lumbosacral spine. If you're acute, you'll do it even more carefully. The next one I'm going to show you do not do if you're having acute pain. So I put my forehead down to try to keep my spine relatively aligned. So my cervical spine is kind of straight in line, hopefully, with everything else. And then it's contralateral. I start with my left hand and my right foot. And you go up just a little bit and hold that for a little while. And I do 10 of these back and forth. For the sake of time, I'll only do about 5. The biggest key with this is you don't go up very high. Be very careful not to go too high. You don't want to bring your leg up too high because you'll put an enormous amount of stress on your LS spine, your lumbosacral spine. Then I just do knee push-ups, but I do it in a rolling motion, where I'm rolling the spine up and rolling the spine down. And I just do about, usually I do about 20 of these. Sometimes in the evening, if I'm more tired from a busy work or ski day, I may lower it down a little bit. So I'll do 20 of those normally. And then, and those that I just did, usually you can do that when you're acute, but not always. Cat-cow, you can do even if you're super acute with a lot of pain, and the spine loves cat-cow. So I'm puffing the LS spine up, and then I'm curving it back down the other way. So first I'm getting it up, and then getting it back down. I won't go into the specifics of flexion and extension because that can get confusing. And then once I've done a few of those, I'll also just kind of go like this, keeping the abs engaged, by the way. With all these exercises, keep the abs and the core engaged all throughout the exercise. And I guess the one exception is with cat-cow, you probably do let the core loosen a little bit so that you can actually do the maneuver, but it's still, you still keep the core somewhat engaged. Then just being very careful, finally flip back over and do 20 bridges. And with the bridges, the delight with these is that you think of rolling the spine up. So just like with the knee push-ups, where you're kind of rolling the spine up and down, I try to go down one vertebra at a time, keeping the core super engaged. And then I do 20 of those. And I've done those for 35 years. They felt that in my later 20s, they thought I'd probably need surgery for nerve impingement in the lumbosacral spine within 10 years, and 35 years later, going great. Keep in mind, so as you progress in your skiing, in addition to these back exercises, you're going to need core strengthening exercises, and I'll have a separate breakout for that on another time. And there will also be a separate breakout, or it won't be a separate one, it'll just be incorporated into the advanced beginner video showing careful stretches for the Achilles and the calf muscles. That's super important as well. So hope you enjoyed this, and wish you good luck with it. If you have questions and comments, feel free to weigh in on the YouTube. And if you have ideas of other exercises that I'm obviously omitting that are critical, feel free to add those in as well. Okay, thank you very much.